I'm 150 kilometers into a 200-kilometer gravel epic. My legs are screaming, my lungs are screaming, but I'm in the front of the race. If I can stick this out to the end, it's gonna be incredible.
Having finished my first pro gravel race, the Sea Otter Classic, just a few weeks ago, my prep for Unbound continues on, and I'm back for more action. This time, much closer to home, up here at the Kielder Forest, which is right on the England-Scotland border, for one of the biggest and best gravel events in the UK, Dirty Reiver. Now, in my eyes, this is one of the coolest events and could potentially rival some of the big US events. And we've got 3 different routes to choose from. Naturally, I've gone for the longest route, of course, the 200-kilometer version, but there's also a 130k and a 65k route to choose from, which would be much more friendly on your legs. Now, while myself and lots of other people are going to be pushing our bikes and bodies to the absolute limit to get a speedy time, there are also loads of people that are going to be focusing on finishing with a smile rather than a grimace on their face. And that, for me, is one of the greatest things about gravel racing. Now, it's not until the race starts, but a few days ago, I was unsure if I would even make it to the start line. So, what makes me doubtful about things, I hear you ask? Well, this is the bike that I plan to race on. Now, I don't think you need to be a bike expert to understand where the problem lies. Now, in a few days' time, I am going to have to be racing on this thing, and I'm going to build it in the meantime as well. The problem, though, is completely self-inflicted because of my desire to build my own gravel race bike. Thankfully, though, I've got support from one of the best in the business and the creators of the world's first gravel-specific group set. Yep, that's right. Shimano have come on board to sponsor this video and help me get to the start line at Unbound for race day, which also means I had the very envious task of a few weeks ago selecting all of the individual components that I want to use to build this bike, plus a few top secret goodies that I can use for extra speed come race day at Unbound. So, let me show you the parts that I've chosen. So this is the GRX 8250 12-speed Di2 group set, plus a set of GRX gravel-specific wheels. And these are the components that I am about to build this bike with. So, time is ticking. It's not that long till race day. Let's get this thing built. Thankfully that all went to plan, and here we are the day before the event. My mindset and body are in good shape. The spirit of gravel vibes have been turned up to the max, and as you can see, I've built myself an absolutely boss looking gravel race bike. Now, this is also an event that I'm going to be using to test out not only my bike setup, but also lots of the other equipment that I plan to use come race day at Unbound. So complementing this particularly bright bike, I also have a particularly stealthy Rule 28 gravel aero suit, which I'm also going to be using with a 3-litre Camelback hydration bladder to keep dehydration at bay. Now granted, here in the UK, hydration might not be top of the priority list, but I think it's important to practice what I preach, and I've also made some tweaks and refinement to my fueling too. With race day coming up tomorrow and 200 kilometers and 3,500 meters worth of elevation, right now, probably best if I get an early night and put my feet up and see you guys in the morning. Reiver. Let's go.
Spicy. Okay, we made it into the front group. There it is. Spicy start. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, including me. Let's go.
What's he gotta do?
And I do want to point out, as the organisers say, technically it's not a race, it's a timed event. But let me just tell you, the guys at the front, they were racing. So, first bit rolls out, neutralised, in inverted commas, and then we were straight onto the rough stuff, and it was actually pretty hilly early on. I mean, this whole event is pretty hilly. 200 kilometres, 3,500 metres of elevation. You're going up and downhill all day long, which for someone my size is perhaps not the greatest thing in the world, but nonetheless, the race started actually pretty good. Made it to the front, great success. I stayed at the front, and then a few of the guys absolutely dropped the hammer real early on, which essentially within the first 15 to 20 minutes formed a group that was seven or eight riders. We found that was a group that worked really well, especially on some of the flatter sections. We could ride through and off together, and that was actually really good.
Okay, let's head down now. Everyone's in the zone. Oh. The climbs are pretty relentless. There's another one. Oh boy, I tell you what, I love riding my bike. I love riding it fast. Whew. These guys are not messing around.
One thing I try to be aware of, knowing how long this event is and how tough the climbing was going to be, was to make sure every time we went up the hills, I was doing my absolute best to really, really spin rather than put some extra strain on my legs. And as I said yesterday, having that 31-2 chainring was absolutely delightful, I've got to say that. So I think that actually did help me out quite a bit with trying to look after my legs and conserve my energy. As we get into the depths of the race, the group was still riding well together, but it started to split apart. Not because anyone was trying to attack or ride particularly hard, but just purely down to the demanding terrain. We started to get halfway through and you've got some pretty long climbs. We're talking 15 minutes of steady, gradual uphill with rough, loose surfaces and some real kicks and spikes in the gradient, which really made the legs hurt. So all of a sudden, those climbs whittled our group down to, say, 7 or 8 riders, down to a 6, then it went down to a 4, and then it went down to a 3. And, would you believe it? I was in the front of 3. I did have to do a small little reality check, and I was like, hold on, I appear to be at the front of the race. This doesn't tend to happen in many GCN videos. So that was actually really cool, and I'm pleased that we can show sometimes we can do all right.
They're the breakaway compatriots. 400 watts again.
Hi, it's me again. As promised, I'm back to tell you more about my setup. Now, at the core of this bike is the Gravel F frame set, drawing on the DNA of Pinarello's performance road bikes, but bringing that across to the gravel. Now, you've already seen the components I've chosen. I want to tell you a bit more about why I've made these decisions. Firstly, I've gone 2-bike. Now the reason for this is simply the sheer speeds that you encounter in gravel racing these days, and I prefer to have that larger chainring up front to help deal with those speeds, and I just prefer the feeling of it. Now in this case, it's a 48 tooth chainring, and that's typically what you find on a 2-bike setup compared to the smaller chainrings that you might find on a 1-bike setup. On certain bikes, running 2-bike can really limit your tyre clearance, but here I can still run a 50mm tyre and a front derailleur. Plus, with the amount of climbing that I'm doing, this smaller 31 tooth chainring will be a real delight. Gearing is a big subject of discussion on gravel, perhaps more so than tyre choice. At the back here, I've gone for an 11 to 34 tooth cassette, essentially the same gear ratios as what I use on almost all of my road bikes. Now this rear derailleur can actually handle a bigger cassette than this, up to about 36 I believe, but the reason I've chosen this is because I feel it strikes the perfect balance between giving you a broad range of gears, but also having the ratios close enough between the gears for smaller jumps. Now, if you were going to be spending more time climbing, then it's nice to know that you have got the option on this GRX rear derailleur to go up to a 36 to give you that easiest climbing gear. Now, I know many GCN Tech super fans will perhaps be ever so slightly disappointed that I haven't fitted a spare Dura Ace chain set to this bike, but fear not, in order to keep this inside joke running, you'll be pleased to know that I have fitted a Dura Ace cassette, a Dura Ace chain, and Dura Ace brake rotors. I've also adjusted these levers in as far as possible, as I do with all Shimano levers. Now, the reason I've done that is because, fun fact, for my height, I actually have particularly small-sized hands. Okay, moving swiftly on, let's talk about wheels. Now these bad boys have a 32mm height rim with a 25mm internal rim width, which by road bike standards might not seem particularly common, but here on the gravel bike, when you're running these big chunky tyres, well, it all works perfectly together. The wide rim works nicely with these big chunky 50mm Pirelli tyres, and the 32mm height rim depth helps with aerodynamics, although granted, at the speeds myself and most people ride on gravel, aerodynamics probably needn't be your main concern. Now, these tyres are actually the speediest gravel tyres in Pirelli's range, and because of their extra large volume, I'm actually running them at some pretty low pressures, just 20 psi in the rear and 18 psi in the front. This is going to be dreamy over the rough stuff. And then finally, I've got all my spares stashed in my saddle pack back here. I've got the same Celled San Marco 3D printed saddle, which I used at the Sea Otter race, keeping me comfy. And then up front, I've actually got the brand new Wahoo Roam, helping to keep me on track for the race. Nice. Right, let's get back to the action. See ya.
76k done, 2 hours 30. That's quick for the road. Okay, this is a pivotal moment. I didn't stop at the feed. We're gonna hack it out, stick it out to the next one. I'm in 3rd place. Top 3, come on.
As I said, my plan was to fuel and hydrate correctly, get everything dialed in, and then I was going to stop at the 100km marker. However, the red mist may have descended, and when I got to the 100km marker, because I was at the front of the race with the 2 other guys, neither of them stopped at the feed, and I made a split second. I was like at the crossroads, the race went left, the feed was to the right, and I went, I turned right and then was like, nope, I can't do it, I can't stop. So I did a U-turn, joined back at the front of the race, because in my head I thought, how often are you going to be at the front of the race? I don't want to just give that up. I knew I had enough water with me, I had hydro tabs in that. I knew I had enough gel because I had 4 big precision 90-gram gels in my pocket, and one of my water bottles was full up with gel, which is like just over 300 grams of carbohydrates. So I knew I was good to go for a further distance, and then in my head I was like, right, I'm going to stop at the 150k feed zone because I think I've got enough fuel to get me to there. So that was my game plan. How it turned out was we got about 120 kilometers into the race and we got to the biggest climb of the entire route. And let me just tell you this, the guys rode up there so booming hard. I was sat in the wheels and some of the spikes were doing like 400 watts. When the gradient backs off, we're doing like 350 watts. And when you are over 100 kilometers deep into a rough, hilly gravel race, yeah, it starts to bite.
Drops from the front group. I just can't keep up this pace on the climbs.
Riding with the guys at the front, like, hats off to them because they were absolutely motoring and I was just essentially doing my best to keep up with them. The two Ribble Collective riders, who incidentally were actually out at Sea Otter, Jensen Young being one of them, who finished pretty high up the results to Sea Otter. Once these guys carried on dropping the hammer, it literally tore my legs to pieces. And a combination of two things. One, I kind of got dropped. Two, I also thought, do you know what? There's 80 or so kilometers left to go. If I try to carry on maintaining this pace, I think there's a good chance we're going to be back at the Sea Otter situation where I explode and grind to an absolute halt.
Now then, you will have noticed a lot of the footage from Dirty Reiver was filmed by me, and let me show you exactly how I've done it. So here, on the front of my bike, I've got the Insta360 Ace Pro 2. Not only does it enable me to shoot in beautiful 8K, hugely stabilised to get that silky smooth footage, but also it means using the magnetic quick release adapter on the front of my bike, I can quickly and easily do this. Take the camera off. Then I can hold it like this and talk to you guys pretty easily. Then once I've finished, I can clip it back onto the front of the bike. And away we go again.
As I was coming down towards the approach to the final feed zone at 155 kilometers, I believe it was, there was another big long climb. And at this stage was where it felt like things were starting to come undone a little bit. My legs were tired, my legs were cramping up. I was starting to feel panicked and stressed because I knew I was going slow and there was still a long way to go. But I tried to sit tight because actually last week, as we were in GC Omega Base, I sat and had a chat with Ollie and he was like, do you know what? I've done loads of these big ultra endurance events, and he was like, you are going to feel really bad and crap at some stage, but sit tight. If you eat and drink enough, eventually your body will come good. So that's what I tried to do, and it wasn't happening that quickly. So I stopped at the last feed zone because I basically run out of water and run out of food. Much to my disgust, as I stopped, filled my bottles up and got some food, the guy who was in fourth place behind me caught and passed me because he didn't stop. So that was my placing gone there. But the main issue I had was I was fast on the descent and could catch him up, but I was so slow going up the climbs that I just went further and further backwards. Third place vanished, fourth place vanished, fifth place vanished, and then before I knew it, I had about 40 kilometers to go, 30 kilometers to go, and I was back in sixth place, feeling pretty sorry for myself. My legs were no good, my head was starting to drop, and if I'm honest, not only was I going through a bad patch physically, but also mentally. I was like, if I'm honest, I felt like I wanted to give up. I was like, this is all going wrong. I'm having flashbacks of Sea Otter, but I sat tight. One rider who caught me is a Hope Factory racing rider, someone called Rob Jebb, who I know from racing in my cyclocross days and going to the World Championships representing Great Britain when I was 17 and he was a senior. So it was actually like a real cool moment to meet back up in this gravel race again. And he was like, hey, how's it going? Tuck in behind. And thanks to Rob, he basically saved me. I could tuck in his wheel and he set a real good tempo. And we started to make good progress. The legs came back round.
I need to catch this guy. I really want third place. Everything is hurting. I've had my final refuel. My only hope is that this guy seems a bit slow on the descents, but quick on the climbs, and that's where I'm slow. Come on now. Come on, Alex.
I was going through some pretty dark times actually, because I was trying to sit tight and thinking my legs are going to come good, and eventually it wasn't really happening. Then we went to this absolutely beautiful, smooth, winding gravel path that ran next to the reservoir or the lake. And I tell you what, some of the views were absolutely incredible. And the way that it all curved and swooped around, that was a real delight at the end. All of a sudden, I glanced up and I was like, hey, there's a rider in front. So my motivation immediately clicks back into racing instincts, and I thought, right, I think we can do this. As we were coming into the finish, caught him, and we went from having a 200-kilometer gravel race to a 3-up sprint. Now, I thought I finished 4th. The results at the moment suggest I was 5th, so we'll wait to see what is actually confirmed once the race is finished. It didn't all go perfectly to plan, but a big improvement after the last race I did, and I think actually pretty cool to finish somewhere near the front of the race and be involved. I think it's something that I can hold my head up high and say that I feel proud of. So with that out of the way, the reality of the situation at hand is it's about a month until Unbound. So my plans are to take the positives from today, rest up, and then I think I really do need to slide as many long rides in. I'm gonna keep chipping away at the heat training, optimize my fueling. And whilst I did struggle today, I don't think it was because I didn't get the fueling right. I think at the end of the day, I struggled because I tried to ride at the front of the race, ultimately with people that are stronger than me. And when you're riding out of your comfort zone and probably slightly above your ability, that's when you're gonna start to struggle at the end. But I'll take that. So, there you go, that is Dirty Reiver done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed this video because I absolutely love making these event videos and sharing them for you to enjoy as well. And I'll tell you what I like the most is reading all of the kind words everyone leaves in the comments section down below. So please do get involved. Let me know what you thought of the event. Let me know what you thought of my performance. And I'll tell you what, if you're heading out to Unbound, well, I'll see you there. But I do have a couple more videos in my Road to Unbound series lined up, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you don't want to miss out, well, subscribe to GCN and GCN Tech and turn on your notifications. Right, I'm out of here, and I think I'm going to go in search of a pizza. See ya.